Dear listener, in this episode, I talk with Brian Clark. Brian is the deep voice and CEO of Copyblogger. When Brian started out on the internet in the late 90s as a giver and content creator, I was going to high school and taking drinks on Saturdays. And now, in 2015, he runs his own software company, supporting 50 families with a revenue of 10 million last year. Let's hear what he has to say. Hello, Brian, and welcome at the podcast Tools Talk.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay. I'm really excited to have you on the show because you're the CEO of Copyblogger and now very into a new platform called Rainmaker. And I'm following you now for a long time, your podcast and all the stuff you're putting out, all your output. And first of all, I really want to thank you for those inspiration, for those moments. And now I want to ask you some questions. And we're going to talk about tools, so your mindset tools, but also the tools you use. And the first question I always ask is, when someone approaches you and asks, Brian, what do you do? What do you say?
That's a tough one because it's weird because a lot of people know me online, but if I'm just walking around in Boulder, not so much. And then you have to go to a dinner party or whatever, you meet new people, and you have to try to explain what you do. So basically now I just say I run a software company. I don't get into content marketing and all that kind of stuff. Now, sometimes it turns out that people are aware of that stuff, and then we can have a good conversation. But I don't try to force it on people when they really, aren't interested when you think about it.
Okay. And if you could change the question you ask when you first meeting someone, would you change it? And which question would it be?
Well, like I said, it's just easier to have that conversation with people because we are kind of an unconventional company. I mean, I think it's becoming more common, but for the longest time, people didn't understand how I could make money from a blog, right? I got that question over and over, and people just didn't understand it. And it's very simple, though. When you have people who pay attention and you are in tune with what those people need, then you're able to sell that to them and make it if possible. So, it's you really just have to adapt the conversation to the person. When I used to be an attorney, people understood what that was, but I'm much happier now. So,
okay, so you switched from attorney to a blogger.
Well, it was in the late 90s when I started, and blogging wasn't around yet. So I started publishing online with email, much like I'm still doing right now. But that was the thing at the time. They were called e-zines, and you would publish your content by email and try to build an audience that way. And I did that for about a year without really knowing what I was doing and made no money. But then I figured out that if you had something to sell other than advertising, for example, my legal services, or later I started real estate firms, things that people already wanted. And that's how I got into what we now call content marketing. You build an audience, you deliver valuable content, but you're not selling advertising. You're the advertiser, your own business. And that's how I've built, I think, 8 businesses now. So,
yeah. And that's also a thing I really love as well. I'm also a blogger, and I'm now really putting out content about minimalism. Do you have anything with minimalism about living simple, very simple?
You need to interview my partner, Brian Gardner. He is completely into that, and he just launched a new project called No Sidebar. So it's about minimalist design, but also minimalist living as well. You'll really like that. So
okay, we'll check that out. Yeah, a minimalist will define success as being happy, contribution, giving to others. How do you define success?
I think that's similar. First and foremost, all of my success is owed to giving people things first before asking for anything in return. I never knew anything about marketing before I started publishing online, so I didn't have any bad habits or ideas about what marketing should be. It was always about creating content, giving it away for free, and building an audience that way. So, and more throughout life, the things that are important to me are my family. I enjoy being able to create a company that supports 50 families. That's really cool to me. But other than that, I think I'm coming down the same way. I don't want more stuff. I don't want more complication. I like to do what I do. I have fun. I'm passionate about it. But other than that, the important things to me are my family, my children, those type of things. So it's funny how your ideas of what success might be change over time. And I think the whole minimalism movement and living simply and all this type of things, I think a lot of young people are on the right track earlier on. And that's great.
Sounds good. Also, I'm very curious about when you're in a big funk, what do you do to get out of it?
Yeah, that's a great question because it happens, used to happen to me much more than it does now. And I think I just have a better attitude about things. I understand that things happen. They don't always go our way, but they're going to pass. And being upset and staying that way is not very helpful. Now, of course, some people have really bad depression and they need to get help to get out of it. But for me, I think it was me feeling sorry for myself when things didn't go my way, and then just realizing over the years that, so what? That makes no difference. It's not helpful. Get back up and try something else. And since I've developed that attitude, it's funny that things mostly go the way I want them to because I'm not afraid to fail.
Okay. So when it's like a short moment, you feel like I'm in a big funk. What's your next action? What would your next action be?
Yeah, it's basically just giving myself that mental pep talk, which is it's not that big a deal, snap out of it and go take action instead of sitting around feeling sorry for myself. It's just there's always something different you can try. There's ways to solve the problem. And I think that's what I enjoy most is trying to figure out how to solve a problem. So now when I get a problem that would have intimidated me or depressed me in the past, now I enjoy it because it's challenging.
Okay. And do you use tools beside mindset tools, like any tools, apps, software to implement goals, systems, or habits?
Well, I'm not. I just I did another tools show for Social Fresh. I don't know if you know those guys, but they have like a social tools podcast. And I don't use a lot of apps. I don't, I'll use native Twitter. I use Twitter on the web. I don't use a lot of fancy stuff. I'm very, very simple and minimalist in what I do. One thing, though, that I have come to absolutely depend on is Evernote. I'm learning more and more how to use Evernote to really juggle a lot of projects. I've added a new curated email newsletter to my schedule this year. We have very ambitious goals for 2015 at Copyblogger Media, and I've got to stay on top of a lot of things. So Evernote has become my best friend, and there's new and amazing ways to use it that I keep discovering. So yeah, that's my main productivity tool, and I really don't use anything else except for, of course, the tools we built ourselves and that we sell. We first and foremost built those things for our own use because we figured if they were good enough for us to use as very successful content marketers, then they would definitely be good enough for anyone to use.
Did it took a long time to get used to Evernote, or?
It did for me, yeah, because I am not, I still create content in Microsoft Word. I'm very simple. So Evernote is a very powerful tool, but the fact that it syncs across devices and, web clipping and all of these basic functions, I knew it did more than that all along, but I didn't take the time to educate myself, and I'm starting to do that. There's a great Evernote book by Brett Kelly, I believe, that is constantly showing you new ways to do it. And people will write articles about how they use Evernote, and I'm always paying attention to those because it's just not intuitive to me, some of these really creative ways to use the tool. I'm so kind of a manual person. I just, just give me a web browser and I can get most things done. So,
and really experienced in content creation.
Yeah, I've been doing it for so long. On one hand, that's a great thing because at the most fundamental level, it's very simple. You have to focus on simply creating the words or the audio or whatever the medium that resonate with your audience. And instead, people are always chasing after the new shiny thing, almost as a distraction of doing the real work. So I focus on doing the real work. Now, that said, you can get set in your ways, and there may be tools that I need to be paying attention to. And, Evernote was one of them, and I finally adopted it, and now I can't live without it. So you have to be able to evolve even as you stick with the fundamentals.
And so you use Evernote, and do you use any other tools to be more productive and or live better?
Let's see, I have a meditation timer on my phone. That's pretty handy. I just started doing that the last several months. But yeah, it's pretty basic. We use Buffer for social media, scheduling and all that kind of thing. Although we are building those features into Rainmaker. I use RSS a lot to keep track of a lot of data sources, both for curation and just to keep up with industry news, but that's being built into Rainmaker. So as you can see, I'm not kidding when I say if we use it, it's going to be part of our platform, because not only is your site the home base that you should always be pointing back to from social or whatever, but that's really kind of where you live, creating content, scheduling your editorial calendar, doing research, keyword research is built in, all of that kind of stuff. That's where I feel comfortable living. It's browser based, of course, but if you can do all of those related tasks in one place with one login, I think that's a really cool productivity thing for content creators, at least.
Yeah, and that's also why you built Rainmaker.
Oh yeah, that was the whole goal. It took us a while because we are a bootstrap company. We did not take venture capital. We don't do advertising. We don't have a sales team. Everything we do and teach at Copyblogger is what we actually have done to grow this business. And we were able to grow to $10 million in revenue last year, and we're hoping to grow more this year. So it's, it's an interesting journey, of course.
Yeah, sounds good. But no ads at all.
No.
Okay,
we don't sell ads, and we don't do advertising. I'm not saying we never will, but so far we keep coming up with creative content marketing strategies. For example, this year we're going to launch a podcast network on Rainmaker. So not only will it host a bunch of different shows, I think we're going to have 8 at the very beginning, and we'll get up to about 15 shows and you're going to be able to do all of that with the Rainmaker platform. So as we're producing this show, this network of podcasts, of course, Rainmaker platform is our own sponsor. And of course, we're actually built on Rainmaker. So people are seeing a demonstration of the platform, which is kind of cool.
I will tell something about the platform. It's like a whole WordPress built system, a big platform, and you can also use it to host it as a membership site. But you can use it to use it as a forum for your followers, for your audience.
Yep.
So it has all the
it's a
all
very
the extras.
Yeah, it's a very souped up version of WordPress. Again, the one that we actually use ourselves. So membership sites, dripped out online courses. It's got all the optimization tools, 30 designs come with it, podcasting. So right now it's a single podcast, but of course, coming very soon, it will allow you to host multiple podcasts. Yeah, it's the thing we wanted to see in the world, and we spent 4 years building the pieces, and selling hosting individually and design individually and membership software individually to get revenue to pay our developers to keep going and building it. So it's 4 years is a long time on the internet, and yet I think the timing was perfect because there seems to be a big gap in the market between something, say, like Squarespace, which is very simple but not powerful, and HubSpot, which is powerful but really expensive.
Yeah. And is it also going to be an email program, like email marketing, sending emails with it?
Yeah. So by March, it does work with outside email providers, Aweber, MailChimp, several others, Infusionsoft. But we will be adding in included email, and that will be an aspect of the marketing automation and adaptive content functionality, which is going to be very cool and very powerful.
I think it will be a huge step. Would also for me, it would be for me be a reason to take a step to the platform.
Yes. Hopefully,
yeah.
yes, that would
so
be
that's
good.
Nice. So that's about Rainmaker. You're now also doing your own blog, your own content curation. It's called further.net, and it's it's a big content. Content you create content in via email, and
Yep.
It's about health, wisdom, and wealth. That are the three main pillars. What's your number one advice on health?
Well, it's interesting because I am not an expert on personal development, which is really what the site is about, or health and fitness, or those type of topics. I know about creating businesses, and I can share my own personal experience in that, but I even try to avoid doing that in Further. Further is really me sharing the books that I read, the articles that I find, podcasts, videos, anything related to taking yourself to the next level, which is where the name Further came from. That what makes us happy is not arriving at some perfect destination. It's about keep going, right? And is very personal to me. It's not, it doesn't make any money. I would do it for free, and I am right now. But at the same time, it is, I on my own podcast, I am doing a case study that tells people what I'm doing. Of course, it's built on the Rainmaker platform. So again, it's another demonstration of what it can do. And I'm doing it all by myself in my spare time. So I think that, is a good case for people to see that this is a very powerful tool, but I'm not a technical person, So anyway, but yeah, so I try to avoid it being about my advice. It's more about I'm learning and then sharing it. So we're all kind of on the journey together, which I think is very fun.
And if you could give one short advice on health, what would you say?
Well, the best advice I can give you is to eat well. And there's all these different diets and this and that, but really it just comes down to, there's a quote from Michael Pollan that says, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And that's a very simple, good advice for how to eat well, because if you're trying to lose weight, it really comes down to what you eat more than how much you exercise. Now, you need to exercise just to be in general good shape. That's, the key to the combination of those two will make you live longer. And I'm now 47. And when I was on my 46th birthday, I was about 30 pounds overweight and I was not happy. And I just started to realize that, I've got kids that are 9 and 12, and I want to be around a long time to see them grow up. And I just felt unhealthy and that I wasn't going to live as long as I'd like to. So I lost 30 pounds and I started developing all these, started exercising more, really started working on something other than my businesses. And that's really what Further is about. So, but again, it's not that I'm the expert. It's that I read a lot of books and then I share those ideas with people. So eat well and work out a little bit, move more. That's the best health tip I can give you.
And plants.
Yeah, mostly plants.
Yeah, mostly plants. And if we're gonna go further on number one advice, short term, what's your number one advice on wealth?
Well, you know me, as an entrepreneur, I, of course, want everyone to be an entrepreneur. That's not realistic. I guess, not everyone even wants that. Some people are just not wired that way. Although, you don't have to create a $10 million a year business. You can create a lifestyle business where, you're able to make enough money. It doesn't take all your time to do it, and you're able to have a nice life. I think technology is going to enable more and more people to be able to do that and really have like you say, a simple, happy life instead of the craziness that comes when you have to commute to a job and you have to answer to a boss and all that. So that's my number one thing. Not everyone will do it, but it's obviously changed my life. And again, when I was an attorney, I had never taken a business class, I'd never taken a marketing class, but I was fascinated by the internet and I just tried, and I think that's what people have to do. They have to take a first step if they want to, even if it's just to create a side business and some side income. You just have to try. And then you learn as you go. But it's great now because there's so much information available. There's conferences and blogs and courses and all this kind of stuff. In 1998, there was nothing. I had to just make it up.
It's fantastic now. Yeah. Yeah. And your number one advice on wisdom?
Well, you have to know yourself. And that's a big portion of what the last 10 years or so, from a spiritual and personal development standpoint, really trying to understand what drives me, what I'm afraid of, and to conquer those things. And I think, as we were talking earlier, that I don't get in the depressive funk anymore. That's kind of the result of working on those things and trying to really understand my motivations and what makes me angry, and does that make sense to get angry over things like that? And often you find that it's not, and that you can really start to change who you are and how you behave by taking the time to really just confront yourself, your internal thoughts, your motivations. But a lot of people, that's the last thing they want to do, is sit alone with themselves. That's why they're constantly on an app or playing a game or watching TV or something to distract them. And that's my biggest advice is confront yourself, get to know yourself, because that's the only way you can improve.
What did you learn about creativity from now on? How does creativity work for you?
Yeah, creativity, one of my favorite topics, because I don't really carry myself around as some highly creative person, and yet that's essentially what I do for a living. We've created a lot of stuff, content, software, products out of nothing, and it's been amazing. But creativity to me is mainly about being able to recognize the intersection of things, in that the way things are similar instead of always putting things into categories or boxes as different. And that's what we're kind of trained to do as children. Oh, this is this and that's that. And instead, you need to be able to see how they relate to one another. This is great in writing, so you can develop the right metaphor or analogy. But it's also seeing the intersection of trends and then realizing that you can create a product or a service that meets a need that no one else is seeing. And number two, people didn't even realize they needed until you give it to them. Obviously, Steve Jobs at Apple was great about that. People like to think that he just created these things out of nothing, but that's not true. He recognized that people have certain desires and problems. And if you can figure out what those are and then figure out a way to solve those things, even if it's a new product that no one knew they wanted, then that's how you do something innovative and creative. So that's my philosophy of creativity. I know there are other people that share that same thing. Creativity is not pulling something out of nowhere. It's recognizing something that's already out there and then delivering it in a unique way.
Yeah, interesting. Do you have any methods to be more creative? Do you use any mind mapping methods or something? Or is it just it comes across and you write it down?
Yeah, I'm pretty strange. I've talked about this before. I can hold a whole lot of things in my head at one time, and that's used to be a problem. When you work with other people, and I would keep things in my head, and no one would know going on, and I would just announce that we were doing something. Of course, I'd thought about it for 6 months, but no one else had ever heard. So from a team building standpoint, with an organization of 50 people, you can't do that. But still, I do that. And it really comes down to just a lot of work, a lot of paying attention, a lot of reading, a lot of research, and then you'll start to see the elements come together. And that's when I start writing down and sharing with the key people in the company that I'll need help with executing on it. But again, it's not about staring out the window. That's the thing about creativity. There's a saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get. But the harder you work, the more creative you are. And I've heard that from many people, from designers to directors, artists, of all kinds of stripe. People work really hard in order to create new things.
And when you're searching for trends, do you use any websites or places where you go, or any books you use to check all those trends and desires, problems?
Yeah, part of it is just paying attention to what's happening in the media. News will reveal basic trends. Also within your own industry, trying to keep up with what other people are thinking. Don't think that you're the only smart person. In fact, you need to find all the other smart people you can and pay attention to what they're thinking. But there are some specific trend sites. I believe trendwatching.com is one of them, where they'll publish free content about their trends, top trends for 2015. And then, of course, they have a paid version, which is very expensive. But if you take their ideas and do your own research, you can get a good handle on some of these trends without paying the fee. So that's one site that I utilize.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Now we're going to the 3 essentials, 3 books. If you have to choose 3 books.
Oh man, that's tough, because I do read a lot. Wow. One book that stands out to me, which is interesting because it's fiction, was William Gibson's first novel, Neuromancer. I read that in the 80s, and that whole concept, that's where he coined the term cyberspace. And again, I wasn't a math or computer science type person at all, but I was so fascinated by that idea. So in 1994, when the internet became, easy for anyone to use. That was when Netscape, the browser, that was basically the beginning of the commercial web. That was the first time I made it through college and law school without owning a computer. I mean, does that sound crazy now? Yes, but believe it or not, pre-internet, not everyone had a computer. But as soon as the internet was available that to easily access, that's when I bought my first computer because I was fascinated with it. So I guess it's kind of prophetic that I ended up, making building businesses thanks to the internet. So we'll put Neuromancer as one of those. Man, you really put me on the spot I've got too many books to even think of one.
The book you recommended the most to others?
Yeah, I recommend a lot of books too. Here's a book that I enjoyed that I read recently, and I recommended and further. It's called The Antidote, and it's Happiness for People Who Can't Stand Positive Thinking. It was a really entertaining book, but it was really interesting about what research and science shows us about negative emotions and all these things that we're told we're supposed to avoid are actually quite useful and normal. So that's a really interesting book. I'm just throwing out book titles now. And let's see. Here's another book that I really loved. It's called Rise of Superman. And are you familiar with the concept of flow?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was basically flow achieved by extreme athletes, and how that was really the secret to how they're able to do snowboarding and skateboarding and all these other extreme sport tricks that would have been impossible 20 years ago.
Interesting.
That progression, they keep topping it. They keep doing things that should not be possible. And it's because they are in a state of flow that is so intense.
Extreme flow.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the lesson is that that's what we should look for in our creativity, in our jobs, and anything that matters to us. And yet we're distracting ourselves with technology and media and too much happening all the time to where we don't get there. So that is a really amazing book. And I think there's a lot to learn from it. But even just reading the stories of the extreme athletes will just blow your mind. It's amazing what they can do.
Wow. And 3 music albums?
Okay, this might be a little easier. Let's see. I would say Nirvana's Nevermind is on everyone's list, but it was very, very important. It changed the world, so I'm going to put it on there. Wilco's Yankee Hotel Foxtrot is one of my favorite albums. It's absolutely beautiful. It's kind of an amazing story of how the record company fired them when they heard that album, and they ended up putting it out themselves, and it was their most popular album ever. It just goes to show you that, record label executive, really no one knows anything. When you're creating anything, music, art, an article, a podcast, you have to put it out there, and the audience will tell you whether it's good or not. So I love that album. And Disintegration by The Cure is one of my favorite all-time albums. I used to listen to that every night before I went to sleep. And it's only been recently that I stopped doing that. So that one has stuck with me.
Good taste. Okay. Thanks for those 3 essentials. Last question. What's inspiring you the most at this moment?
Well, it's amazing, and it's hard to even choose one thing. We just had, so we're a virtual company. Our people are in all across the world: Canada, United States, Brazil, We have one person in Europe, one person in Australia, people in Asia. So we all got together in one place to meet, and it was amazing. I just can't believe how fortunate I am to have this team of amazing, smart people. And every time we get together, we come up with more ideas than we know how to get done. But it's a good thing. So that is very inspiring to me. And of course, the work that we're going to try to get accomplished this year as a company is important. But other than that, on a personal level, I really love doing the Further newsletter. It doesn't even feel like work. It's really fun. It's exciting. I feel like the early days of Copyblogger when it was just me. There's something exhilarating about that, even though I love that I have this amazing team of people who can do things that I could never do by myself. It's nice to have a project that I can do by myself.
Okay, so those people, they were your employees, all those different countries, cultures?
Yep. Most people are in the United States, but we do have quite a few Canadians, and we have 4 people in Brazil. It's kind of interesting because we always hire people from our own audience. We've never run an ad. We've never even done a post that said we're hiring. It's just the person we need tends to show up at the right time, and they believe in what we're doing at Copyblogger. They understand it. So we've been really fortunate. I always worry if we had to jump from 50 to 100 really fast, would we be as fortunate to have, to get such amazing people? But that is one beautiful thing about having an audience that you can draw from to recruit for employees.
Yeah. So you would never choose to go back as a one-man lifestyle business. You really like the employees and the big business you have right now.
Well, I could see, at some point, maybe if the company were to be acquired or something like that, I'm not sure that I would go that route again. Hopefully I would have enough money to where I wouldn't have to worry about it that much. But I know I would keep going further, no joke. And probably I'd be doing something related to Further, and we'll just have to see. When I started Copyblogger, I swore after my former business that we would have no employees. And, it was just going to be me and partnerships. And of course, look what happened. So maybe you can't trust what I say what I'm going to do next.
Yeah. So it all happened. It just happened to you.
You go with it, sometimes the right thing to do may not be what you had planned, but it's too good to pass up. And I think that's been the story of Copyblogger year after year.
Yeah. They all embraced it, your work.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's end with that quote from Seth Godin, which I really love. There are really only 2 ways to go forward as a player in this economy. One is you can be a cog in a system, hoping to get picked. The other thing is the ability to put on a show, to say, I'm going to assemble this information, these people, these resources, these assets, put this into the world and hope that people will embrace it. And you did it, Brian.
Yeah, he's a smart guy, that Seth Godin, right? But that's the story really of what I do. And it's just amazing. And I feel very fortunate to be able to do it.
Yeah, thanks a lot for being on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
All mine. Thank you so much.
And have a really nice day.
Thank you.
This was the episode with Brian Clark. I hope you liked it.
Instead of always putting things into categories or boxes as different. And that's what we're kind of trained to do as children. Oh, this is this and that's that. And instead, you need to be able to see how they relate to one another. This is great in writing, so you can develop the right metaphor or analogy. But it's also seeing the intersection of trends and then realizing that you can create a product or a service that meets a need that no one else is seeing. And number 2, people didn't even realize they needed until you give it to them.